Hi, everyone. It's Joe Veneri, the host of Fit Insider, the show where I talk with the entrepreneurs, executives, and investors who are redefining the business of fitness and wellness. Today, I'm joined by Deepen Parikh, a partner at Courtside Ventures. Courtside is an early-stage venture firm focused on fitness and wellness, sports and media, and gaming. In this episode, Deepen tells us about Courtside's new $75 million fund, the firm's thesis as it relates to fitness, including the reinvented gym, human performance, community, and personalized data. And we get into how Deepen thinks about the team, business model, and market when evaluating an investment. A quick note, and we touch on this a little bit in the episode, but Anthony and I are excited to be partnering with Courtside, where we'll be working as advisors to the firm. So if you're building a company in the health, fitness, wellness, or sports categories, we'd love to hear from you. Send an email to insider@fit.co. Hi, Deepen. Welcome to Fit Insider. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me on. Looking forward to it.
Likewise, lots to talk about, and I think maybe just jumping right into it. Do you want to give us some background both about you and Courtside and what's going on?
Yeah, sure. Love to. So Courtside Ventures, we're an early stage fund. We invest in seed and Series A companies across really only a few key areas, and that's wellness and fitness, sports and media, and gaming. And really the genesis of the fund came together when one of my partners in the early 2000s was starting a company called Crossover. It was a sports analytics and software company. His biggest challenge, despite building something that was very large scale and ended up selling to a private equity firm, was not being able to raise venture capital money. And the biggest challenge around raising venture money was a lot of folks viewed sports as too small of a market. And quite frankly, sports in the truest definition of the word is a pretty small opportunity when you think about it in terms of only teams and leagues. But the goal was in launching Courtside Ventures is how do we expand that traditional definition of sports? And that's what we do at Courtside. We invest in sports, not just about selling to teams, but also it's a fact that everyone is an athlete in some way. And whether that's, you working out or going to the gym, or you on your Peloton competing against someone else, or you playing youth sports or playing a video game, we believe that the form of an athlete has greatly expanded. So we launched our first fund in January of 2016. We had two investors in that first fund. One was Dan Gilbert, who's owner of the Cleveland Cavaliers, and WPP, the advertising agency. In our first fund, we invested in 40 plus companies. Some of those companies include The Athletic, which is one of the largest sports subscription content platforms, StockX, which is one of the largest secondary marketplace for sneakers. And then more heavily on the fitness and wellness side, you have companies like Freeletics, which is the largest digital fitness app in Europe, Future.fit, which is a virtual individual personal trainer, and then a number of other businesses that sit on kind of in and around the ecosystem of the growth of wellness. And then finally, we've made a number of investments in the gaming sector, ranging from IP and content in games, but also in terms of esports brands and teams such as 100 Thieves. Just to kind of sum it up, our main goal is we're constantly thinking about what's increasingly important to the younger, more diverse global population. And that importance is seen in various ways. So you have where there's a willingness to spend more time and energy, increase share of wallet, building deeper relationships online based on mutual passions, realigning your professional career. So you have folks like content creators or trainers, or you have, in the case of a lot of what we're talking about today, which is seeing the shift in people's own desires in terms of wanting to be healthier, look or feel better. So that's kind of the overarching view of Courtside.
Yeah, a lot of awesome stuff going on there. You touched on it, the convergence of sports and media and culture and what it means to be an athlete, what it means to create content on the internet, when what really goes into that from every kind of aspect. You mentioned, initially the first fund in 2016, investing in some 40 companies. So where do things stand now in terms of looking at potentially a second fund and what you guys are targeting?
Yeah, absolutely. So happy to say Courtside is now in the midst of close to wrapping up our second fund, which is a $75 million fund, still focused on the same exact verticals. So still fitness and wellness, sports media, and gaming. But this time, in addition to having Dan Gilbert and WPP, who have been incredible LPs, also been able to bring on a number of other pro sports team owners, corporates, a number of family offices, and a lot of strategic athletes and individuals into the fund. And so we have to date already made 12 investments out of that new fund, many of which I'm sure we'll get into later in the podcast. But on top of that, we're also super excited to officially say that both you and Anthony are going to be joining Courtside as advisors. And, we really respect and admire the incredible brand you've built with Fit Insider, but also in addition to that, just I think the respect and trust that a lot of early stage founders have in you guys. And so we're excited to be working together a lot more closely in the second fund and going forward.
Likewise, I think there's a lot to be excited about there, both from, this new $75 million fund, the caliber of folks and the expertise that they have that are bringing to the table across sports and fitness and gaming and all the other industries. But also, getting a chance to work together. It was always so funny whenever we were talking with early stage founders and the overlap that, they had just hopped off a call with you or were trying to get to us, and the intersection there. It only makes sense that we can both help, these founders find success, make sure they're getting the funding and the resources they need, and kind of the expertise along the way to really bring and continue to bring fitness and wellness to the forefront. Really exciting.
Yeah. Feelings mutual.
So with that, kind of taking a step back, we touched on a lot around health and wellness, around fitness and sports, folks considering themselves athletes, even if they don't play a sport. And obviously with that, you see a lot of other investors and founders getting involved in this space. So when you think about where Courtside sits in the landscape, how are you differentiating yourself, and kind of how are you talking to founders about, the value that you're going to bring?
Yeah, that's a great question. The way we view it is we're early stage investors at the end of the day, and we are looking for the best talent in terms of folks that obviously some people who have built companies in these verticals prior, some people who haven't, but have a tremendous amount of passion around what they're building. So we are first and foremost, and I know it sounds cliche, but it's true. We're investors in people who have passions around these verticals. Something we think about a lot is the fitness growth over the last 5 years. A lot of it has been transformational for the industry, right? You look at Peloton. Has Peloton changed the fitness industry? Absolutely. But if we look at what a lot of the business potential brings, something we constantly think about is we still don't believe it's doing a lot to change or reverse this massive health epidemic that is impacting 2.2 billion people globally who are still obese. And so we view a lot of our lens of how we view the wellness world from a global standpoint. There are founders out there who are building and thinking about problems in terms of how to get other people to live a healthier life or live a more physically active life. And other markets, other geographies don't have as much access to VCs that are necessarily looking directly in these verticals. So the way we really, when we're talking early stage founders, is we work really closely with a lot of generalist funds who are amazing and have done a lot of investments into these verticals, but we only focus on these areas. Our job, my job in particular, leading our efforts around fitness and wellness, is to spend every waking moment focus on just these verticals. And so we are talking to every company, we're talking to every corporate, we're talking to, later stage companies, we're talking to individuals, talking to even government bodies to understand what are the different trends and initiatives that are out there in all these different markets, and how is that going to impact building a new technology company in this space. And so our pitch is we are a vertically focused fund that only focuses on a few key areas. And our job is to help you get from point A to B to C, not necessarily from point A to F.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I think that focus is an important one, especially as this space continues to grow. You mentioned some of the companies that you had invested in, from Freeletics to Future, Silofit, Gainful. One that I thought was particularly interesting was Every Mother. So when you look at these companies, maybe picking a few of them, some that stand out, what gave you conviction about those investments and how did they come together?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, it is our job to see everything that's out in the market and really make an informed decision in terms of what we think are the biggest trends, or most opportunistic trends, and also our theses around it. So we're a really thesis-oriented fund within each of our verticals. Sometimes people say, well, you're a vertically focused fund and you have a big thesis. Does that constrain what you're looking at? Mm-hmm. The truth is it does not. If anything, it helps us refine what we believe are the biggest opportunities in this space. So it might be helpful if I can go in a bit about our thesis and then can kind of work a bit backwards to talk about the companies we ended up investing in.
Yeah, jump in.
So, from a thesis perspective, and this is ever evolving for us, we're constantly thinking about, what is changing in the market and different geographies, and then also in terms of what's happening with the economy. But we have 4 key pillars that we're currently looking at in terms of our thesis. And that's the reinvented gym. So you look at traditional health and fitness club industry revenue has obviously been hit pretty dramatically because of what's transpired over the last 7 months. However, we don't believe they're going away. At the end of the day, I think a lot of thought processes that come out of a crazy pandemic like we're currently facing with leads to people moving to the extreme. And so you hear a lot of headline buzzworthy lines that say gyms are dead, gyms are never coming back. Truth is, gyms in their current format may not. But what we're really excited about is, can you develop a smaller operator? Can you build non-membership models where these are still facilities that have their purpose, but because they're not necessarily going after a massive CapEx, can still have an incredibly lucrative model, and then you can layer software on top of it. So an example of a company that we invested in Fund 2 out of that is a company called Silofit. So Silofit builds micro gyms, 800 to 1,000 square feet spaces that can only be rented out really by fitness and wellness professionals. We started thinking a lot about how personal trainers are compensated at larger gyms. So, we have, you and I have spoken about this several times in the past, but a average personal trainer gives up a lot of their hourly bill rate to the gyms they tend to work at. For a lot of people, working at the big gyms makes a lot of sense. But if you look at folks that are trying to be more entrepreneurial or don't necessarily want to rely on the gyms, where do they go? And so Silofit, in their initial form, has built these small compact facilities that allow for trainers to come in and train their clients, and they rent it on an hourly basis. So they don't give up any of their actual hourly bill rate, and it's all dynamic pricing. In addition to that, Silofit also has developed software that handles scheduling, billing, certification, insurance, really the full spectrum for a individual to be able to run their own business. And that's exactly what it is. It enables any fitness or wellness professional to run their company without needing to deal with a lot of the non-training components. So that's kind of the reinvented gym thesis. Another one is, surprise, surprise, more around human performance. So, disposable income continues to shift towards experiences, as we've seen this amongst younger audiences. And there's a huge emphasis on mental well-being, experimentation of new products, therapies, and just in terms of having peak physical performance and fitness. And so people care a lot about different types of products that they can take that are going to help them from a standpoint of performance, but also feeling better. And a lot of that is personalized. So example of a company in that is Gainful, which we invested in recently. Gainful is fully personalized sports nutrition products. They started out with protein and are now going to be getting into a few other product categories, but they've done an incredible job of really tailoring to the needs of the average individual versus going after a mass market product. The next is more on the community engagement side. So, at the end of the day, fitness, wellness, to a lot of people, it's a religion. And this has been facilitated by digital platforms that create, enable, and manage communities. And the overarching feeling amongst a lot of the individuals on the platform is that they have aligned goals, or they have aligned, interests, or different types of, ways of thinking about, their body or their diets, or a bunch of different factors. And so we have not made an investment purely around that yet. Although Every Mother, I think, falls into that bucket quite a bit. And, you look at Every Mother, which you asked about, they have built an absolutely incredible platform for moms. And when you look at their, in terms of how they started, they started after going after one condition called diastasis recti, which is something that a lot of women post-birth deal with. And something that they have done an incredible job of is everything they do is evidence and research-based. So they started out with really one condition, and they have now built an incredible platform for moms. So prenatal, postnatal, during pregnancy, they built something that a lot of moms rely on incredibly heavily, and has been able to transform so many lives. And, that's obviously starts as more evidence-based kind of programming, but over time, you can just imagine the opportunities that they can go after in terms of building such an engaged and like-minded community. And finally, personalized data and measurement and monetization is kind of what we bucketed into. But we've all seen this through incredible products like Whoop, Aura. Data just matters a lot more when you can actually provide actionable feedback on the backs of it. And so data for the sake of collecting data doesn't do a whole lot for anyone. But when you can actually go back to someone and say, based on how you slept, this is how much your output or how much activity you should do the next day, that's unbelievable. And so, we do believe there'll be a commoditization of sensors over time. But something we are looking at, we made a recent investment around, is how this continuous data collection can lead to rewards level type feedback. And so we made an investment recently in a company called Paceline. And Paceline is building a next-gen financial services company wrapped around fitness and wellness. So they tie health and wellness, wearable type products or activity trackers. On the other end of the spectrum, they offer financial services products and rewards that effectively provide feedback and rewards that are earned based on how physically active you are and your actual spend level data. So those are four of our key theses and some examples against it. I've been rattling off a lot, but figured it'd be helpful to dive into that.
Yeah, I think that's incredibly important, both to lay out, how you guys are thinking about things and some of the companies that you have invested in, but also then kind of working backwards. Everything that we're seeing now kind of fits directly into this, right? The reinvented gym, human performance, community, and personalized data. Just, I think in the last couple weeks, if not months, the funding rounds, the kind of news and announcements around these categories, everything is certainly trending in that direction. And I think we'll only continue to do so, especially as we come out of COVID and figure out just what does health and fitness look like kind of in the new world where connected fitness and wearables are so much a piece of it. You have sleep and recovery moving into the forefront like never before. So when you look at all that and think about maybe where things are trending, is there a white space that you're looking at? Is there a type of company that you wish existed because you want to back it, just given all these opportunities?
Oh, man. Think about that a lot. I think at the end of the day, I don't know. Yes, there are going to be so many ideas. I think in venture, a lot of times you think you see a company and perhaps you end up passing on it and you think that there may never be another company like it. The truth is, I think we're just still so early in this world of wellness, and especially in fitness, and you look at nutrition, that I don't think the majority of the ideas that are going to be huge breakout successes over time has necessarily even been created yet. Something you and I have spoke about before is companies that are catering more to fitness and wellness professionals as well, right? So how do you continue to grow that market on a global basis? So I think there are a lot of companies that can come out of the backs of that. Something that we are constantly trying to figure out is consumers now have access to more information than ever, and that's not changing. May not always be accurate info, as we've seen over the last few weeks
Sure.
or last few years. But I think there's absolutely a renewed prioritization around evidence-based. Like, I can't say it enough. Evidence-based is starting to carry so much more weight. Now, I don't think that that's necessarily the norm across all products and all types of technologies, but I think it will become increasingly more and more important. So, we are looking at companies around that, and it's hard these days to back a brand that doesn't have some sort of scientific background or evidence-based approach behind it. Not to say you can't build a successful company without it, but we do believe that it's such a differentiator, and it leads to much stronger retention over time that you would not get otherwise. Something that I can't remember where I came across this, but that really resonated with me was when someone was talking about just the fitness and wellness industry as a whole. They were saying simplicity yields change, complexity yields fads. And this can't be any more true of the world we live in today around wellness and fitness, especially, where if you look at a traditional fitness app, the biggest challenge is acquisition costs, strong unit economics, and retention. And why? Because, quite frankly, there's so many options out there. And so I believe that a lot of what we're going to see going forward is not going to be to overcomplicate a product. It's going to be to simplify it, but to have something that is, so simple that people literally can use it, and it provides an incredible utility for them on a day in, day out basis.
Yeah, I think that's something we try to come back to time and time again. It's, this difference between the kind of wellness, quote unquote, buzzword and things that are able to, whether it's science-backed, proven out, or based on adherence, to your point about, people are able and willing to stick with it over time because it is simple and it does deliver that result. Like, where is the line between, the claims that some companies, devices, supplements make and like the actual outcomes? And we're starting to see it now with companies like Peloton. Not that that's the end all be all, but when they're able to cite a churn number and say people are doing X number more workouts and fewer people are leaving the platform, it's like, at the end of the day, it's like, both from a business standpoint, the types of things that you would look at for, in terms of an investment, but also those individuals getting actually healthier over time. Like, those are the types of things that you need to see that just in the traditional sense of fitness, like, weren't even part of the equation whatsoever.
Yeah, 100% true. I mean, what Peloton has done is, to your point, change the equation entirely, right? It is what started as they did not create an indoor exercise bike. What they created was entertainment value with a much more superior product. But I don't believe Peloton's product is overly complicated, right? At the end of the day, what have they done? They've added an incredible looking screen, but the real secret sauce is the relationship you have with the instructor and the other people on the platform. And so that, we can talk about retention, have a whole session on that alone. But when you look at retention, I don't think there's a single digital app that's not connected to hardware that can compete, even come close to compete with that level of retention. The truth is that is okay, because the economics of a digital fitness app might be very, very different. And so we try to segment the market up pretty heavily from connected fitness versus purely digital versus online, offline. Like, I'll give you an example. In looking at the nutrition industry, something we constantly think about is, it's not hard to explain to someone that if you eat healthier or don't eat as much junk food, you will feel better and your body will be healthy. The truth is, if you're not tackling someone both online and offline, and you don't have a personal relationship, the accountability changes. And so we're constantly trying to figure out nutrition. Is it going to be an online only solution, or is it also going to have an offline component? We don't know the answer yet. But that's a business to me that I don't know if can exist online only with incredible retention if you don't necessarily have that accountability built in. So you're going to have to have a personal relationship, and it can't just be purely tech. or AI in the background, expect to have really strong unit economics.
This is something that I think comes up time and time again, and it's top of mind right now, just based on a couple of things that you mentioned, just with rethinking the role of the fitness professional, at the same time looking at companies like Peloton and Tonal who are taking things into the home. But then in the middle, you have folks who just can't seem to get over the hurdle of like, but what about that personal relationship, that whether it's for social reasons, whether it's for, to your point, adherence and maintaining this habit change over time, like that individual instructor or nutritionist or whoever, that's the role that they were playing, was fostering this relationship and keeping it going in a way that we haven't quite seen where technology is going to fill that void yet. So it's certainly going to be interesting when you think about how do these two things come together, and both how do some of these connected fitness companies or software companies leverage individuals, and how do individuals, nutritionists, wellness coaches, leverage technology going forward? Because it seems like it's certainly going to need to be a combination of both.
Yeah, definitely agree. It needs to be a combination of both. I think what we're seeing increasingly more and more is it's just still so early in the market, right? Like when you look at the number, or the compounded growth rate of number of professionals coming into this space, I think a lot of it is still people transforming their lives or their careers and saying, I no longer am going to work at a corporate job. I want to go out and do what's my passion, which is, be a fitness or wellness professional. And then the ability to also monetize off your digital audience and become a influencer of sorts, which can then help you monetize both online and offline. Like the opportunities are endless. I think where we see the biggest gating factor for this market to continue growing is still in the back end kind of infrastructure, which is how do you allow someone to build their own business without the friction? You guys have written about this, really well at Fit Insider, which is the old Shopify mantra, which is arm the rebels. And when you're trying to arm the rebels, especially in the world of fitness and wellness, you have to go after and be thinking about how they can engage their audience online to build a business offline. Right. And that's something that I don't think has necessarily been figured out. You have incredible platforms like Patreon, and you have YouTube, you have Playbook, you have all these different businesses that have done a really good job. But I don't believe there's a one-all catch-all type solution that exists there today that someone can turn to and say, this is where I go to build my business.
Sure. And I think, to your point, it's kind of early there. One of the things that you mentioned down that path is being positioned in the fitness, wellness, sports space. It's really your job to see everything. And, I think we've talked about it before, hundreds, if not thousands of companies a year that you're, sitting down and talking to, taking a look at decks. How are you engaging with founders? How do they get on your radar? And then once they are, what filters are you using to evaluate whether it's the founder, the team, or basic, criteria for an investment?
Yeah. So, we are an open door. We want any company to be able to reach out to us. And we'd love to really hear any ideas where people are innovating in these spaces. And, my email is deepen@courtsidevc.com. I mean, our job, as you mentioned, at the end of the day is really to see and understand how people are viewing these markets in different ways, especially from a geographic standpoint. I'll give you an example. What one region we're looking at quite a bit is the Indian market. And what we have learned, and we're still trying to get much smarter around it, is that in the US, we have an incredible amount of fragmentation in terms of all these different businesses that are trying to go after a similar audience. In a market like India and other places in Southeast Asia, it's the reverse. There isn't much fragmentation. So there's an opportunity for a few brands to own multiple parts of the industry. And so it's the reverse challenge. And a lot of it is in India, you have a growing middle class. You have, certainly a ecosystem that is in a lot of cases starting to prioritize health and wellness much more. But the reverse kind of lack of fragmentation presents an incredible opportunity where I think there are companies that have massive, massive growth potential because they can offer up different products and services under one umbrella. And so kind of speaking to the what we look at when we're looking at companies, we're pretty regimented in our process in terms of what happens from getting an initial pitch all the way to finally making the investment. But we really break it out, probably not too dissimilar from other VCs and how they look at it, but it's broken up into three key areas, and that's team, business, and market. And, in that actual order. So team, domain expertise. If it's not domain expertise, it's certainly something that really makes them tick from a passion side, or maybe they've had their own personal experience, which I think lends them an incredible kind of unique view into the market. And then on the business side, you're looking more at, the product market fit itself. Unfortunately, when you're in an industry where there's so much passion, a lot of times you're building products for problems that don't necessarily exist. And that's okay. I mean, a lot of times it starts as that and then it morphs into something completely different. But that is something that we tend to see a lot around the fitness and wellness side. So, something we really try to hammer home is, challenging founders to really understand, is this a problem or is this a solution you're creating that a lot of people face or need? And so that's something that's really a big part of our process. Understanding defensibility, I think in a market where there's so many potential competitors, understanding what differentiates your offering from others. And then heavily focused on the unit economics of the business. Depending on the stage, we invest in primarily seed and A, although at times we have looked at invested in a few things on the pre-seed side. But the way we always want to understand it is, if it's, let's say, a consumer subscription product, it's really hard for us to come in without seeing some initial unit economics. I think that's what helps us really understand, one, the market, but also two, how founders are able to get creative in terms of getting a lot of their initial users. Then the market. I think this is pretty self-explanatory, but the market sizing, again, in the areas where we look, which is sports, fitness, and gaming, all three are huge industries in their own right, but can be sliced and diced many different ways. So especially in fitness, we see a lot of companies that are targeting very small markets initially, and then of course can grow over time, but we got to believe that they can grow over time into those markets. Something that's incredibly important for us is it a fit within our thesis? We are absolutely in many cases going to be wrong in terms of passing on a company that may end up being wildly successful. I think that's the name of, that's just part of the venture model itself. But we want to know that based on what we're seeing in the market and the beliefs we have, that what we invest in actually fits into that thesis. And then can we be helpful? Are there areas where we're differentiated to help this company from potentially other investors coming in? And then understanding the platform risk and potential exit opportunities. So that's kind of our main framework. Happy to dive in a bit more detail. Probably, again, not too dissimilar from other funds, but that's really what we're focused on right now.
Yeah, I think both between that and, to your point, it as maybe self-explanatory or as common as some of those things are with respect to how other investors might look at it, hearing you walk through it, I think is incredibly helpful for folks, along with just like the broader thesis of thinking through the buckets of the reinvented gym, human performance, community, and personalization. I think with all those things, you and I could probably talk about the fitness industry and the various opportunities all day. But as we look to wrap up here, you mentioned your email address and that Courtside is an open door. Just tell folks, where they can find you on the internet, what's the best way to get in touch, and even just check out Courtside in general.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can, as I mentioned, reach me at deepen@courtsidevc.com. You can also find me on Twitter at Deepen Parikh, Deepen Parikh. You can go to our website. Email address is also on there. Our goal is, like I mentioned, we want to really meet talented founders, regardless of where you are and what you're working on, if it's in one of our key verticals.
Awesome. Deepen, I appreciate you making time today. Excited to share this conversation out, and hopefully we get some folks reaching out with some interesting things they're working on.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, man. Appreciate you having me on.
Thanks everyone for listening to today's episode. For more from Fit Insider, visit insider.fit.co and subscribe to our weekly newsletter for insights and analysis on the business of fitness and wellness. Then, go ahead and subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. See you next time.